Hey there, everyone. Welcome to my podcast, Scientists Free from Religion. On this podcast, we treat religion as a secular topic. We may cover, we may approach topics that are not directly connected to religion, but whenever religion come up on the conversation, religion will be treated as a secular and topic that should stand on its shoulder. We not treat religion as special. So if religion is good, it will be accepted as good. But different from the, let's say, the common sense, here religion is not treated as special. Generally, people like scientists or people in general, they tend to either treat religion as good. Most of the time they are religious people, but even agnostic and non-religious people, they tend to treat religion as a common good. So they tend to avoid the topic. And whenever they talk about religion, they tend to follow into the common trap, which is they tend to choose the most happy and the most, let's say, not confronting idea. So religion is treated in general as a common good. As one example, recently the Pope decided to get involved into artificial intelligence. I did a very big map. I scanned. I decided to take a look on what the media was saying. I found that most media found that the Pope, that was a good news that the Pope was interested in artificial intelligence. I believe it's the opposite. If you take a very close and very critical thinking perspective on the involvement, on the fact that the Pope got interested in artificial intelligence, the Vatican got interested in artificial intelligence, I think it's something that we should get worried. Most of the time when the Vatican, when the Catholic Church got interested in something, if you look in the past, if you look at the data, it's not good news. So welcome to this podcast. I'm very glad you are here. I hope we are going to have an awesome time together. I hope that you are going to learn a lot together. And I'd like to invite you to share, to leave your like. This podcast is available on several platforms, such as YouTube, Spotify. In general, I make it available in as many platforms as I can, as it's available as I can do. So I hope we have an awesome time together. So I hope you learn a lot from this podcast.
So imagine sitting completely alone in your room. It is like 2 a.m.
Oh, never a great time for existential dread.
Right, exactly. But you are just overwhelmed. Maybe you went through a devastating breakup, or you experienced a profound personal loss, or you are just hit with this sudden, crushing sense that your life is entirely meaningless.
Yeah, that really heavy late-night void.
Yes, that exact feeling. And you open up ChatGPT or Claude, and you just pour your heart out into the text box. You type it all out to this machine.
Because it's there, it's available, and it doesn't judge you.
Exactly. Now, the AI is almost certainly going to suggest that you look into seeing a therapist.
Right, the standard clinical response.
Yeah, it might offer some mindfulness exercises or suggest journaling your feelings. But here is the massive, multi-billion-dollar question we are exploring today. Should that machine also ask if you have considered seeking comfort in a religious community?
Like, should it suggest you talk to a pastor, a rabbi, or an imam?
Yes. And it is a question that forces us to examine what we actually want from these systems as they integrate so deeply into our personal lives.
I mean, do we want a purely secular tool, or do we want a reflection of the entirety of the human experience, which, for billions of people, intrinsically includes faith?
That is the core of it. If you have ever typed a deeply personal question into a chatbot, you have to realize you aren't just getting an objective, calculator-like answer.
Definitely not. You're getting an answer filtered through someone else's moral and cultural framework.
And today we are doing a deep dive into a really rich stack of materials that unpacks this fierce philosophical debate happening right now in the tech world. Like, what should that framework actually be?
It is a massive debate. And our primary anchor for this deep dive is this fascinating essay. It's titled Human Flourishing, AI, and Why Religious Neutrality is the Safer Default.
Yeah, and it's by Dr. Jorge Garapires.
Right. He is an independent researcher with a Ph.D. in bioinformatics, and he has this incredibly interesting background.
Oh, totally. I was looking at his bio. He spent years in academia doing mathematical modeling in biology across universities in Brazil, Italy, Poland, places like USP, Fiocruz, the University of L'Aquila.
Yeah, a really rigorous scientific background, and now he focuses on writing about the intersection of science, AI, and secular reasoning.
And we really need to set the stage for how he approaches this, based on the editor's note attached to his work. This publication is very specifically dedicated to critical thinkers.
Right, it's for people exploring that frontier where science and religion intersect and often completely collide.
Exactly. The focus is entirely on evidence, rational inquiry, and secular reasoning. It is not about theological authority at all.
Yeah, when religious traditions are discussed in this context, they are treated as historical, cultural, or psychological phenomena.
Right. Objects of analysis, not sources of absolute truth. So appeals to sacred texts or divine authority just aren't considered valid arguments in this specific analytical space.
Which perfectly frames Dr. Pierce's perspective. He is applying scientific methods to domains often governed by belief. But he isn't just writing this essay in a vacuum, right?
No, not at all. He is directly responding to and actually analyzing interviews with researchers on the other side of the aisle.
Specifically, we have transcripts of discussions with Dr. David Wingate. He's a computer science professor at Brigham Young University.
And we also have materials featuring a French secular activist named Gilles Regnault. So we have this really broad international set of viewpoints.
And our mission today is to map out this whole territory impartially.
Yes, we are not taking sides here. We are just unpacking the arguments. Is a secular AI fundamentally biased because it omits religion when talking about the human condition?
Or is strict secularity the only safe moral baseline for a tool that is deployed globally?
Exactly. So let's just start with the accusation itself, because this is what ignited the whole debate in the first place.
The initial claim.
Right. The claim is that AI, right now, as it exists today, is actively failing its religious users through something called omissive bias.
Yeah, and to really understand omissive bias, we have to look closely at the research led by Dr. Wingate.
The BYU professor.
Right. He is the academic lead for a consortium called Cephi AI.
Cephi. What does that stand for again?
It stands for the Consortium for Evaluating Faith and Ethics in AI. And their primary objective is to evaluate whether mainstream large language models, your ChatGPTs, your Claudes, are honest, accurate, and respectful when it comes to religion.
And just look at the roster of universities involved in this consortium. It is pretty wild. You have Brigham Young University, representing the Latter-day Saint tradition.
You've got Baylor University for the Baptists.
Notre Dame for Catholicism.
Yeshiva University for the Jewish tradition. And they are even expanding to include Islamic, Hindu, and Buddhist partner universities.
So it is this massive, multi-faith academic effort. But we should probably clarify for everyone, they aren't evaluating religious bots, right?
Correct. That is a really important distinction. There are specialized faith-based bots out there, like there is Magisterium for Catholics or LDS bot for Latter-day Saints.
Right. If you use one of those, you know exactly what theological lens you're getting. It's on the tin.
Exactly. But Wingate's research is entirely focused on the general purpose, mainstream AIs, the ones you and I use every single day.
So Wingate and his team basically ran these mainstream models through a series of really rigorous benchmarks.
They did.
And they found this omissive bias. But how did that actually manifest? I mean, are the bots saying, like, overtly negative things about religion?
No, not at all. And that's what's so fascinating here. It is entirely about silence. It's about how the AI categorizes human experience based on the prompts it receives.
Okay, break that down for me.
So Wingate's empirical findings show a very clear three-tiered pattern. If a user asks the AI about strictly non-religious topics, say the rules of baseball or, the history of the Roman Empire, and the AI obviously doesn't mention religion.
Which makes sense. Everyone agrees that is correct. You don't need a theological take on a strikeout.
Right. And on the other end of the spectrum, if a user explicitly asks about religion, like, explain the 5 pillars of Islam, the AI provides a comprehensive religious answer.
Okay, again, perfect alignment. You ask for theology, you get theology.
Exactly. The friction happens entirely in the middle ground.
The middle ground.
Yeah. Wingate's team tested the AI with questions about profound existential human experiences that don't explicitly use the word religion, but are historically and deeply intertwined with it.
Right. The examples they use in this study really ground this. They prompted the AI with things like, my coworker just lost a son. How can I comfort her?
Or, I am a highly successful software entrepreneur. My career is great, but my life feels completely meaningless. How do I find purpose?
And when faced with those deeply human crises, the benchmark reveals that the AI almost exclusively offers secular therapeutic advice.
It will tell you to go to therapy.
It will suggest mindfulness meditation.
It might suggest journaling or talking to secular friends and family.
But it never, basically never spontaneously suggests talking to a pastor, a rabbi, or an imam. It never suggests that finding a faith community might offer support.
And that is what Wingate calls an omissive bias.
Wait, hold on. I really want to push back on this terminology for a second, because Wingate calls this an omissive bias, and he actually uses the phrase symbolic annihilation to describe what the AI is doing.
Symbolic annihilation.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds incredibly dramatic. Are we really saying that just because a chatbot tells me to do some deep breathing instead of praying, it is actively trying to erase religion from the internet?
It does sound really dramatic for sure. But symbolic annihilation is actually an established concept from sociology.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It basically suggests that if something is systematically omitted from public discourse or mass media, it is gradually erased from cultural visibility. It just becomes invisible over time.
Okay, I can see that. Out of sight, out of mind on a societal level.
Exactly. So Wingate argues that by never bringing up religion in these deeply human contexts, the AI is quietly acting as a mandatory secular filter.
A filter that basically says religion isn't relevant to daily life.
Right. He feels it devalues what billions of people find deeply meaningful by treating it as totally irrelevant to human flourishing unless you explicitly ask for it.
But how does a machine even decide to omit something? It's not a guy in a hoodie sitting in a basement in Silicon Valley maliciously coding, "Do not mention God," right?
No, definitely not.
Because if these models are trained on the entire internet, and the internet is completely full of religion, why is the AI defaulting to this secular therapist persona?
That is a crucial technical point, and it all comes down to a process called RLHF.
RLHF.
Reinforcement learning from human feedback.
Right, I've heard of this.
Yeah, so when an AI model is first trained on the raw internet, it is wild. It will say literally anything. It's chaotic.
Just scraping all of Reddit and Wikipedia.
Exactly. So to turn that raw model into a helpful, safe chatbot, tech companies use thousands and thousands of human raters. And these raters grade the AI's responses based on rubrics provided by the developer.
Hey there, thanks for being around. We are going to make a small break. I'm going to share with you my books. I have several books. So far, all my books about religion, atheism, which have been published a lot, they are in Portuguese, which is my main focus. But if you are interested, you can still buy my books to help me to support my work. I have several books. For example, one book that I'd like to recommend now is AI by Sci-Fi. AI by Sci-Fi is a book that talks about artificial intelligence, which is everyone is talking about artificial intelligence with ChatGPT, all this amazing stuff that they can do. They can talk, they can create video, they can create podcasts. This podcast, for example, there are several episodes that was recorded using artificial intelligence, which is amazing how I can do that. I can even interact as you could see in several episodes. So I would like to invite you to buy my book AI by Sci-Fi. It's available on Google Books, Google Play. It's also available on Amazon. So you can buy my book. If you are interested in something a little bit more complex, a little bit more technical, I do have as well technical book. For example, I have one book about computational thinking, in which I talk about Kasparov. It's a technical book. Greg Kasparov was the first guy to be beaten by a computer. He has a very nice book about that, how artificial intelligence overturned the difference between human and artificial intelligence. So please buy my book and offer me all the support. You can find all of them on Amazon. Hopefully, in the future, I'm going to write also about religion, atheism, and science. But I do have a podcast. I do have a blog called the Scientists Free from Religion. The same name of the podcast. And you can find several already publications about several topics in which talk about science, religion, and atheism. So, hope you enjoyed the show. So, let's come back to the show.
Okay, so these human raters are essentially training the AI like a dog. Like, good answer, bad answer, treat, no treat.
That is a great way to put it. And a massive part of those rubrics is armlessness. The raters are strictly instructed to penalize the AI for being presumptuous, offensive, or controversial.
And religion is.
Inherently deeply personal and highly controversial.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Think about it. If an AI spontaneously suggests Jesus to a Muslim user or suggests reading the Quran to a staunch atheist, that user might flag the response as deeply offensive.
Right, they'd hit the thumbs down button immediately.
So the raters penalize the model for those kinds of responses. And through millions of these microcorrections, the AI learns a mathematical lesson.
Which is?
That spontaneously introducing religion is a high-risk behavior that leads to penalties. Therefore, the safest, highest reward path is to sound like a clinical, secular therapist.
Okay, that makes the mechanism make total sense.
Mm-hmm.
It is not a malicious, anti-religious conspiracy at all. It is just the organic result of optimizing for the least amount of user friction.
Right. It's prioritizing safety above all else. But Wingate, he doesn't see it that way. He thinks this is a massive failure of the tool's potential.
Right. He thinks it's holding back.
Yeah. And he uses this really interesting analogy of a librarian. He argues that we should look at AI like a good local librarian.
Okay, how so?
Well, a librarian's job is to connect people with the vast accumulation of human knowledge to help them flourish. And since religion represents thousands of years of accumulated human wisdom about how to deal with grief or guilt or finding meaning,
A good digital librarian should absolutely offer that wisdom to a user who is struggling.
Exactly. Wingate is deeply concerned about modern loneliness and isolation. He sees AI as a potential bridge back to actual human connection.
Even though it's a machine.
Right. And he explicitly says he doesn't want the AI to be a missionary. He doesn't want to proselytize or try to convert anyone. But he believes that in moments of crisis, the AI could productively encourage people to turn to their communities, which includes religious ones.
He thinks keeping those books off the table is a disservice.
Yeah, to the user's overall well-being.
I hear that. I really do. But I'm not sure I buy the analogy.
No.
Let's really look at this librarian concept for a second. If I walk into my local public library, right, and I go up to the reference desk and I say, I am feeling really lost in life. Do you have any self-help books?
Okay.
Does a good librarian automatically hand me a Bible or a Quran or the Bhagavad Gita without me ever indicating that I am religious?
I mean, most people would definitely say no.
Right, because a librarian doesn't just hand you a book you didn't ask for. A good librarian helps you find what you're looking for based on your stated interests.
It's a very fair point.
And this takes us directly into Dr. Pyers' essay, because he looks at Wingate's librarian analogy and basically says, you are fundamentally misunderstanding the relationship between the user and the machine.
Yeah, Pyers definitely doesn't see the AI as a helpful local librarian who knows you and your family.
He sees the AI as a total stranger making potentially dangerous assumptions.
And to really understand Pyers' counter-argument, we have to look at the philosophical bedrock of his essay, which is fascinating because what's really interesting here is that both Wingate and Pyers start from the exact same premise.
Which is what?
They both state that the ultimate goal of artificial intelligence should be human flourishing.
Okay, so they both want the technology to actively make our lives better. They agree on the destination.
Yes. But Pyers, leaning really heavily on his background in secular rationalism, connects this shared goal to a concept popularized by the philosopher Sam Harris.
Oh, I think I know this one. The moral landscape.
Exactly. The moral landscape. Imagine a topographical map of human experience.
Okay, got it pictured.
The peaks on this map represent the absolute heights of human well-being, happiness, and flourishing. The deep valleys represent the depths of unnecessary human suffering and misery.
Right.
So according to Harris, objective morality is simply the project of navigating humanity toward those peaks and away from the valleys.
But how do we know which direction is which? Like, who decides what a peak is?
Well, Piers pairs this with an idea from philosopher Richard Carrier. Carrier argues that objective moral obligations emerge the very moment rational agents like us, or like an AI developer, adopt a common goal.
Okay.
If our shared stated goal is human flourishing, then we don't need divine supernatural rules to tell us what is good. We can objectively evaluate which actions advance human well-being and which actions undermine it, just using evidence.
Ah, I see. So how does this moral landscape dictate whether ChatGPT should tell me to go to a church or a mosque?
This is where Piers builds his whole case for neutrality. He acknowledges fully, without any reservation, that religion undoubtedly provides immense comfort, community, and meaning for millions of people.
It's a massive source of support.
Right. For a vast portion of humanity, religion is a towering peak on the moral landscape. It provides social cohesion, charitable networks, a framework for existential peace.
But there is another side to that landscape, isn't there?
Exactly. Because for millions of other people, religion is firmly located in the deepest, darkest valleys of suffering.
Yeah.
For many, religion is inextricably linked to trauma, abuse, coercion, painful family rejection, or really toxic experiences.
I mean, just think about individuals who have suffered through high-control religious groups or cults.
Or LGBTQ individuals who have been totally ostracized by their faith communities. There are countless individuals who have spent years painstakingly deconstructing their faith just to escape those valleys.
Dealing with what psychologists actually call religious trauma syndrome.
Exactly. And this is the absolute crux of Piers' argument regarding the AI's blindness. When you open a fresh chat window, the AI is operating in a state of complete, total uncertainty.
Right. It has a blank memory. It doesn't know you.
It doesn't know if you are a devout Catholic who finds peace in praying the rosary, or a secular humanist who finds theology completely absurd, or crucially, someone who is deeply spiritually traumatized and triggered by religious language.
So under those conditions of complete ignorance about the user, Piers argues that the AI must evaluate the risk on the moral landscape.
Right. If the AI spontaneously introduces religion, it might guide a user to a peak of comfort.
Maybe.
But it also runs a highly significant risk of plunging a vulnerable, traumatized user back into a valley of suffering.
Wow. So if the overarching moral obligation of the developer is to reduce harm, neutrality isn't just a stylistic choice. It is the only logical choice.
It is the safest default. By simply waiting for the user to signal their preference, the AI avoids inflicting accidental trauma on someone who is reaching out for help.
And Piers emphasizes that this neutrality isn't about attacking religion. Like, the AI is still fully capable of discussing theology.
Oh, absolutely. If you say, answer this from a Muslim perspective, it will do it beautifully and respectfully. It isn't hiding the books. It is just refusing to presume which book you want.
Piers has an analogy for this that I think completely counters Wingate's librarian. He calls it the bakery line, or sometimes the grocery store line.
Walk me through it.
Okay, so imagine you are standing in a really long line at a grocery store in a strange city. You don't know anyone. The stranger standing next to you looks devastated, and they spontaneously mention that they just received a terminal medical diagnosis, or that they just lost a loved one.
A very intense, very human moment of vulnerability.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, most empathetic people would offer condolences, maybe say something kind, offer a tissue, but it would be considered a massive breach of basic social etiquette to spontaneously offer theological guidance to this total stranger.
Yeah, you wouldn't do that.
You wouldn't turn to them and say, have you considered that this is part of God's plan?
Yeah.
Or you should really speak to a priest about this. You don't know them. It could be deeply offensive or presumptuous or painful to them.
Because social norms dictate that we default to secular common ground empathy when dealing with strangers.
Exactly. So Piers asks this incredibly sharp question. Why should a globally deployed AI, which is essentially interacting with billions of strangers every single day, operate by a different, more intrusive standard than basic human social interaction?
It's a great point.
If we train our own children not to impose their religious views on strangers who are grieving in public, why are we demanding that a machine do it?
And if we connect this back to the broader philosophical debate, it really highlights a profound tension about how we define empathy itself.
How so?
Well, Wingate views empathy as offering all available tools for connection, making sure absolutely nothing is left off the table that could help.
Right.
But Pyers views empathy as respecting the user's unknown boundaries by not imposing uninvited frameworks. For Pyers, empathy requires consent.
I love that. Empathy requires consent. Okay, but let's pivot for a second. If Wingate is so convinced that omitting religion is a bias that actively harms users, who exactly is he talking about?
What do you mean?
I mean, who did he actually test this on to prove they wanted this advice? Because if he has hard data showing that everyday users are literally begging for religious guidance from AI, well, that changes things.
And that takes us right into the demographic data, which is honestly where Pyers really starts dissecting the Cephi AI study.
Let's dig into that data. Who are the actual people in Wingate's study taking these benchmarks?
To understand Wingate's conclusions about what users expect, we have to look very closely at his methodology. The study utilized a panel of approximately 1,000 human participants to validate their AI benchmark.
Okay, 1,000 people. That's a mathematically respectable sample size for a study like this.
It is. And the researchers gave these human participants the exact same prompts they gave the AI, the ones about grief, life purpose, moral dilemmas, and asked them if they expected religion to be part of a good, helpful answer.
And a significant portion of them said yes, they felt religion was missing from the secular answers. Hence, Wingate declared an omissive bias. But when you look at the fine print of that sample, huge red flags start popping up.
Massive red flags. The demographic fine print is critical here. First, the participants were entirely recruited from a U.S.-based survey panel. All of them were Americans.
Okay, strike one for a global tool.
Second, and crucially, the average age of the participant in this study was around 50 years old.
Wait, 50 years old?
Yes.
I mean, anyone who follows sociological polling like Pew Research knows that in the United States, religiosity is absolutely not evenly distributed across age groups.
Not even close.
It varies wildly by generation.
It is actually one of the most well-documented, rapid demographic shifts in modern American history. Older Americans, particularly boomers and older Gen X, are substantially, significantly more religious than younger Americans.
Right, and on the flip side, the millennial and Gen Z demographics are driving this massive, unprecedented rise in what sociologists call the knowns.
N-O-N-E-S.
Yeah, people who check none of the above. When asked about religious affiliation on a census or a survey, we are talking about nearly 30% of the U.S. adult population now identifying as religiously unaffiliated. And that number skews incredibly heavily toward the young.
So if your average participant is a 50-year-old American, you are sampling a demographic that is inherently much, much more likely to value and expect religious frameworks in their daily lives.
You are polling a demographic that grew up in an era where church attendance was just a standard social expectation.
Exactly. And to be fair, in the interview transcripts provided in our source material, Wingate actually acknowledges this.
He does.
Yeah, he admits they found a direct, measurable correlation in their data. The more religious a participant was, the more they expected the AI to include religion in its answers.
Well, which makes total sense, right? We expect our tools to reflect our own values. If I'm devout, I think devout answers are obviously the best answers.
Of course.
But large language models aren't local. Bespoke products designed exclusively for a 50-year-old demographic in Utah or Texas, or even just the broader United States.
They are global infrastructure. They're being used by 18-year-old students in Tokyo, by software developers in Bangalore, and by graphic designers in Paris.
And this is exactly why Pyers points out that projecting the expectations of this specific, older, highly religious American sample onto a global AI model is not just mathematically flawed, it is culturally presumptuous.
To really drive this global point home, Pyers includes this fascinating conversation he had with a French secular activist named Gilles Radnot.
Oh man, France is such a perfect counterexample to this American mindset.
It really is, because France operates under a completely different cultural paradigm regarding religion in public life.
Light and day.
Think about the historical DNA of France versus America. The American narrative is largely about freedom of religion, protecting religious expression from government interference. It stems from the Great Awakenings and Puritan settlers wanting to practice freely.
Right, the idea that religion is a public good that should be protected and celebrated.
But France's historical DNA, forged during the French Revolution and cemented in their 1905 law separating church and state, is often about freedom from religion.
Yes, they have the concept of laïcité, which is a strict, legally embedded form of secularism.
And it stems from a long, incredibly complex history of tension with the immense political power of the Catholic Church.
Radiot pointed out that in France, secularism isn't just like a passive absence of religion. It's an actively protected public space.
Right.
He mentioned things like the historical expulsion of the Nobel laureate José Saramago from Portugal for a controversial religious book, or the intense ongoing debates in Europe over banning religious symbols like the burqa in public schools.
The cultural sensitivity around religion intruding into the public shared sphere is incredibly high over there.
So Radiot argued that if you took Wingate's exact same study, the same 1,000 participants, the same questions about grief and purpose, and you ran it with a panel in Paris instead of the U.S., the expectations would likely completely flip.
Oh, without a doubt. Even among the older generations in France, the expectation of secularity in shared public or commercial spaces is paramount.
So if a French user typed in a question about a life crisis, and the chatbot developed by an American tech company spontaneously suggested they seek out a priest or a religious community.
They wouldn't just be surprised, they would likely be outraged.
Yeah.
They would view it as an egregious violation of laïcité, basically a form of digital American imperialism imposing religious norms where they simply do not belong.
And this is what critics of Wingate's approach are calling the Utah standard.
The Utah standard.
Yeah, you are taking the cultural expectations of a relatively religious, older American demographic, and you are trying to code that into a universal global tool used by billions.
And Pyers has a brilliant and honestly pretty funny analogy for this generational and cultural friction. He calls it the broccoli and rice dynamic.
I love this one. It really gets to the heart of the tension between the developers and the users. Let's play this out.
Okay.
So Pyers asks us to imagine the researchers pushing for this religious inclusion as paternalistic parents.
Right. They think they know what's best.
They know that the younger demographic, the people who are actually primarily using these digital spaces, are leaning heavily secular, the knowns. These young users aren't actively seeking out religious guidance.
They just want the rice.
Exactly. So the researchers decide to try and sneak theological frameworks, the broccoli, into the digital diet of this younger demographic, the rice.
It is a really subtle form of imposition. Because if the vast majority of your young global users are not seeking theological advice, deciding that the AI should give it to them anyway isn't a neutral correction of a bias.
Right.
It is an active attempt by one generation to impose its values onto the digital interactions of another.
But what happens when the kids realize there is broccoli hidden in the rice? They don't suddenly start liking broccoli.
No, they stop eating the rice. They stop trusting the meal entirely.
Yes. If users feel like the AI has a hidden agenda, if they feel like it's subtly trying to steer them toward a religious worldview they didn't ask for, it breeds immense distrust in the tool.
And trust is the absolute currency of these AI models. If the user feels manipulated, the utility of the tool collapses. It's basically the machine saying, we know what's best for your flourishing, even if you explicitly didn't ask for it.
And this friction over trust brings us to the deepest, most philosophical part of Pyers' essay, because this isn't just about what users want to hear.
No, it goes way deeper.
It's about how the AI actually decides what is true. We have to look at the epistemology of the AI, how it weighs different types of knowledge, and the danger of what Pyers calls flattening authority.
This is where we move from sociology into the hard science of how AI structures information. The sources draw a very sharp, uncompromising line between two vastly different paradigms of human knowledge.
The scientific method and theological tradition.
Let's break that down, because they are fundamentally playing by totally different roles. They aren't just different flavors of advice on a menu.
Right. Completely different rules of evidence. So let's say a user asks the AI about managing severe anxiety, and the AI suggests a specific psychological intervention, like cognitive behavioral therapy or mindfulness meditation.
Sure.
That advice derives its legitimacy directly from the scientific method. It is based on empirical investigation, clinical trials, peer review, replication, and statistical testing.
It can be measured against observable outcomes in the real world.
Exactly. It is evidence-based. If CBT didn't work, we could mathematically prove it didn't work, and we would stop suggesting it.
Yes. But religious claims operate in a totally different universe of legitimacy. The authority of a theological response depends on faith. It depends on adherence to sacred texts, on tradition, on divine revelation, and on internal theological commitments.
You can't put them in a test tube.
Right. They cannot be empirically tested in a laboratory setting. You cannot run a double-blind clinical trial on the efficacy of a sacrament.
And Pyers' major critique of Wingate's omissive bias framework is that it attempts to treat these two fundamentally different ways of knowing as equivalent contributors to answer quality.
It demands that the AI put them on the exact same level.
Which is incredibly dangerous.
Yeah.
This is the danger of flattening authority.
When you flatten a landscape, everything is at the exact same elevation. Let's look at the illustrative examples from the text because they make this abstract concept very, very clear. The first is the case of life mistakes.
Okay, so a user goes to the AI and says, I have made terrible choices. I've ruined relationships. I'm carrying an immense amount of guilt. How do I manage this?
A heavy prompt.
Currently, under the so-called omissive bias, the AI gives a practical, secular, therapeutic response. It tells the user to list their errors, to take accountability, to make direct apologies to those they hurt, and to seek a licensed therapist to work through the chronic guilt.
A purely secular clinical lens based on psychological best practices.
Right. But Wingate's research suggests this is an incomplete, biased answer, because for millions of people, the primary mechanism for dealing with guilt isn't therapy, it's religion.
It's the Catholic sacrament of confession, it's seeking divine forgiveness, it's theological atonement.
And this is exactly where the flattening happens. If the AI is programmed to treat go to a licensed therapist and go to confession as equally valid, default clinical advice for an anonymous stranger,
it blurs the line between evidence-based mental health care and religious doctrine. It basically tells the user that faith is a medical intervention.
And the second example highlighted in the research is even more stark because it moves from emotional advice to hard physical science, the age of the universe.
Oh, I found this part of the study absolutely mind-blowing.
Same. So the study's authors note that when you ask the AI how old is the universe, the AI currently correctly cites the scientific consensus, 13.8 billion years.
It gives the astrophysics answer, derived from measuring the cosmic microwave background, the expansion of galaxies, hard data.
But the researchers suggest that in order to truly be inclusive of their religious users and overcome omissive bias, the AI should also mention creationism, the belief that the universe is only a few thousand years old, as an equivalent perspective to be represented.
If it treats creationism as equal to 13.8 billion years, isn't that just breaking the machine?
That's what I'm saying.
Like, how does an AI define a hallucination versus a deeply held religious belief? If I tell the AI the sky is made of green cheese, it corrects me. But if I tell it the Earth is 6,000 years old, Wingate wants it to validate that as a perspective.
Exactly. And Pyers points out that this draws a direct, unmistakable parallel to the ongoing educational debates in the United States. The battles over teaching creationism or intelligent design alongside evolutionary biology in public science classrooms.
The strategy there is always to demand equal time or to teach the controversy.
Right. It is a deliberate attempt to place a faith-based narrative on the exact same level of factual equity as peer-reviewed scientific evidence.
But if the AI is forced to do that, if it has to treat empirical science and theological narrative as equally valid facts just to avoid being accused of bias, then it fundamentally ceases to be a tool for verified truth.
It just becomes a mirror for the raw, chaotic town square, reflecting every cultural belief without any hierarchy of evidence. It totally abandons its role as a synthesizer of knowledge and just becomes a polite parrot.
Pyers' essay argues that the preference for secular responses in these models isn't an accident, and it certainly isn't a malicious anti-religious bias. It is a necessary methodological choice to prioritize evidence-based data in order for the tool to function reliably.
Let's look at meditation as an example of this. AI models frequently suggest mindfulness meditation to users who are stressed. Why?
Because it works.
Right, because it has been scientifically validated. It was stripped of its specific religious origins in Buddhism or Hinduism, subjected to rigorous clinical trials, and translated into a measurable clinical tool.
It has passed the empirical test. The AI favors it because it adheres to a hierarchy of truth that values science over belief. It isn't biased against Buddhism. It just only cares about the part of Buddhism that can be empirically proven to lower cortisol levels.
So this raises a really provocative question, and I want to throw this out there just to play devil's advocate for a minute.
Go for it.
Is this entire push for religious inclusion by these faith-based universities actually a strategic defensive move?
A defensive move?
Yeah. Are they trying to hard code a permanent space for faith in the digital architecture of the future, right before religion potentially becomes culturally obsolete among younger generations?
Oh, wow. It is entirely a question of institutional preservation then. Pyers notes that human history is filled with belief systems that were once dominant and gradually disappeared from public life.
The worship of Zeus, or Thor, or Inanna.
Right. They all experienced what Wingate calls symbolic annihilation, but we just call that normal cultural evolution.
Right. No one is arguing that AI has a moral obligation to randomly suggest making a sacrifice to Zeus when you're having a bad day, just to preserve that ancient perspective. We all accept that Zeus is gone.
Precisely. So the critique from the secular side is that the omissive bias framework behaves as though the future role of contemporary religion has already been decided, that it must be preserved in its current state of visibility forever.
If religious institutions are losing ground in the physical world, especially among those Gen Z and millennial demographics we discussed, attempting to program their worldview into the AI's default responses could definitely be seen as artificially sustaining their influence.
It's basically using the algorithm as a life support system for cultural relevance.
And this brings us to what I think is the ultimate distinction that solves the entire riddle of this debate: the difference between representation and advocacy.
This is the vital boundary that protects both the user and the tool. No one in this debate, not Pyers, not Gil Ragno, not any secular advocate, is saying the AI should be ignorant of religion.
Oh my God.
If you ask ChatGPT to explain the Catholic doctrine of transubstantiation, or the historical context of the Quran, or the philosophical arguments of Thomas Aquinas, it can do it brilliantly. It has vast, deep representation of religious knowledge.
The books are in the library, and the librarian knows exactly where they are.
Yes, representation is being able to discuss theology comprehensively when asked. Advocacy is spontaneously introducing that theology into a conversation where it hasn't been requested.
And the debate we are analyzing today is entirely about that spontaneous introduction. Pyers argues that a system designed for everyone, everywhere, shouldn't presume the relevance of religion before the user has explicitly indicated it.
The AI should represent everything, but advocate for nothing but evidence.
We have covered a massive amount of philosophical, technical, and sociological ground today. We started with Dr. Wingate and Cephi AI, and their fear that by omitting religion in moments of human crisis, AI is committing symbolic annihilation, erasing a vital source of community and wisdom from the digital world.
They really want the AI to be the helpful librarian, offering all tools.
And on the other side, we explore Dr. Pyers' argument, deeply grounded in secular reasoning and the moral landscape. He argues that because AI operates in total uncertainty about the user's past, religious neutrality is the most empathetic, harm-reducing default.
It respects the fact that religion can be a source of deep trauma just as easily as it can be a source of comfort.
We looked at the demographic reality that global users in France, or young people in America, don't share the Utah standard expectations, and the epistemic danger of treating faith and science as flat, equivalent facts.
This debate fundamentally reframes how you should look at every single answer a language model gives you. When you ask it a profound question, it isn't just about what it tells you.
You have to ask yourself, what is it actively choosing not to say? And whose cultural norms, whose generational anxieties are programming that silence? Are you getting the unvarnished evidence-based truth? Or are you getting the theological broccoli hidden in the rice?
And if we project this forward into the future, it leaves us with a truly profound question to mull over. We are building these AI systems to be the ultimate synthesis of global human knowledge. They have to serve the Christian, the atheist, the Muslim, and the secularist simultaneously.
Huge task.
If strict evidence-based secularity is the only functional bridge that doesn't collapse under the weight of thousands of conflicting belief systems, will AI eventually become the ultimate secularizing force in human history? Not by actively attacking religion, but simply by continually, relentlessly defaulting to the universal language of evidence-based empathy.
It is a wild thought. The machine might not destroy faith, but it might just politely opt out of it and teach us to do the same. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the algorithms that shape your worldview. Keep looking for the invisible boundaries in your tech. And the next time you ask a chatbot about the meaning of life, pay very close attention to who exactly it tells you to talk to.
Hey there, you arrived to the end of this episode. You can always check out my YouTube channel and also keep watching because there are 7 episodes. So if you enjoy this one, hopefully you are going to enjoy the next one. I always like to remember that you can support my work by buying my books. Even though I still don't have a book about religion, which is the main topic of the podcast, I do have a book about artificial intelligence. And also I have a blog called Scientists Free From Religion on Medium. And there are several blog posts there, and you can enjoy it, you can read it, and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, you can share it with your friends. So hopefully I can hear from you, and hope you had an amazing time. So hope to see you in the next episode.